In Hamaspikal of the Hashem. We started a new chapter, so we finished one chapter, Baruch Hashem, School Mitzvot. We're up to a second chapter. What I mentioned last week about chumot, stringencies, and all kinds of things. It's important to know that when you learn Torah, you cannot learn it from the street. You cannot learn it from a person. You have to learn it from sources, from texts, from authorities. This is very important.
It's a big problem now.
Yeah.
It's like, there was this young rabbi who commented on the whole,
Yes.
And he's saying, well, what he says is Torah. And it's like, it's just opinions. There's no sources given. It's just opinions.
Right. And
people accept this as
this is the problem. The problem is, I remember, maybe I shared with you, I never shared this before, but one of the reasons I left Ner Israel was much because of the certain incitement I felt the Rosh Yeshiva had towards groups like Chabad and other such groups. And I know it's funny for you to hear that from me, but I couldn't learn in a place that was that derogatory towards Hasidic groups and things to that effect. But also there was another thing. I was in a very good smicha program. The rabbi there was very special, very big Talmid Chacham, and it was Rabbi Tendler's son, Aaron Tendler. And I just kept coming across teachings in Shulchan Aruch where the rabbi would say, even though it says this in the Shulchan Aruch, don't tell your wife. Or you can't tell people because they don't accept it. Or the Rebbitzin's not going to like when she hears this. And I remember sitting there in the class and saying, so who decides halachot? Is it Moshe Rabbeinu or is his wife? Who's deciding here halachot? It's going to be some Am Haaretz in a synagogue, or we're going to study from Chachamim. It's an incredible thing. That's where I'm going to learn Judaism from. Harav Peretz once told me, he said the previous generation, they used to learn books of Musar, Mesilat Yesharim, Chovot Levavot. He said today they just read the signs on the walls when they walk to the Kotel, all those posters. That's where they learn their Musar from. He said, how can you live in a generation where its Torah is a street Torah? It's not a text Torah. And it's a very dangerous thing.
The Ashkenaz afterlife joke?
No.
Two lines in HaShamayim. One says, those who listen to their wives, and the other line says, those who didn't listen to their wives. So, those who listen to their wives, it's a very long line going all the way back. So this guy passes away and he goes up to heaven, and he sees the two lines, and he sees that the line says, those who didn't listen to their wives, there's only one guy. So he goes up to the guy, taps on the shoulder, and says, how come you're on this line, everybody else on the other side? My wife told me when I go to heaven, this is the line I have to stand on.
No? Well, I think you could say that about all kinds of husbands, not just Ashkenazi ones. But the truth is that this style of learning with no sources, of lectures without connecting to the personalities behind them, of Torah that doesn't have any boundaries of what is right and what is wrong, when someone doesn't have to prove themselves anymore, and whatever they say can just pass, it's a very big danger to our Torah. And what Rabbi Avraham was trying to say is there are all kinds of stringencies and higher levels that you think you could go on, but you're not always licensed or qualified or even fitting to be on that path. And it's not anything bad about you, but there are 101 things that can go wrong when you try to do extra. And rather, the safest route for a person may be just to do what a Jew needs to do. That might be the safest route, and there's nothing embarrassing about that.
It's also the least expensive.
The least expensive?
Chalav Yisrael and Galak Kosher are an average of 20% more expensive than
well, Rabbeinu Avraham is not just talking about, like we mentioned last week, not just minusha and halachot, but even in world views and understandings of the way the world works. This leads us into the next chapter. And then if someone asks a question, why not be strict? And the answer we gave was, because here you think you're being strict on this side, but there's so many interrelated outcomes that you're not able to calculate all the things that might come out of your action. And so it's better just to do what you have to do according to Jewish law and not try to strive for more unless you're ready for that. There are also interrelated opinions and people. I'll explain. If you read a certain book from a certain rabbi and you find that it's very strict and very harsh and very rigid, the chances are that rabbi is a very strict, very harsh, very rigid person, and that his personality has very much influenced his Torah. You might find a rabbi that is very open-minded and very liberal and very willing to allow all kinds of things, and you'll find that his personality is very often the same way. You'll find some who are angry, some who are kind, some all kinds of things. You'll see this in many places in the world, especially in Torah. You have to know that when you study about a rabbi, what kind of rabbi was he? Our rabbis warned us very much about studying from people that you were not familiar with. You know, this idea of these lectures, they come into town for a day, they speak, they go away the next day, and all kinds of lectures. They're called in Hebrew magidim. Magid, they're speaking, they're lectures, they're speakers. The Baal Shem Tov hated these people. The Baal Shem Tov has pieces where he said, they come to the communities, they don't know the communities, they don't know the dynamics of the community, they don't know what the relationship between rabbis and the people and the people and the people, they don't know.
That was one of his hallmarks, though, wasn't it?
The Baal Shem Tov?
Yeah.
Not a speaker.
Oh,
he would travel around all kinds of places, but with his own group of people.
Oh, and let them speak. Oh, okay.
You know, he never came to a place and got up, I'm going to give a drasha to you. There were many people like this. But he felt that these people you're not familiar enough with the situation in order to pretend to be an expert at it.
Wow.
And he tried very hard to stop these people. Because you have to know, that one rabbi who fits for his community, but he's not qualified to teach in a different community. Those are different people, different nature, different temperaments. In midot, it's the same way. You have to know that one midah is always there. One character trait is directly connected to another character trait. Rabbi Novam says this the following way: you should know, ki hamidot haterumiyot, that the lofty paths, the attributes, yardu kruchot ha'olam, they came down into this world as interrelated pieces. V'novot zo mizo, and they naturally flow one from the next. Uktzatan hitkashrut hachshara v'achana liktzatan. He said, and some of them are training, they prepare you to reach another level. One level, one midah will always help you with the other midah. He says, the training you'll need in order to instill one attribute will help you instill another one as well. This is generally the case. Rabbi Avam is saying there are certain midot that flow one from the next. And if you have one, you'll reach the next one. And he's going to explain. Harachmanut, compassion, kindness. Krucha b'nedivut is linked to generosity. A person who's generous generally comes from a place of compassion. Yes, there are those who are generous out of ego. They want their name on a building, or they want a plaque on the wall. That's a misguided generosity. It's not necessarily evil. It's just doesn't come. What?
You give a lot of money. You want the name there. What is wrong with that?
I didn't say there's anything wrong with it. I said that it doesn't come from a place of compassion. It comes from a place perhaps of ego.
No,
What?
I don't agree with that.
You can argue with me. I'm not God.
Well, what's coming from a place of ego?
You give money, a lot of money, personal money. And
Oh,
you want his
donors?
name to be
Donors?
there.
When donors
Someone, there are two people who want to donate a hospital. One of them because he wants to help sick people, and the other one because he has to make his taxes by the end of the year, and he wants a big building with his name on it in the middle of Manhattan.
And the tax reduction.
Sure, he's doing a good act. He's a generous person. It's not necessarily linked to compassion, though. Eli, could you have a person who's compassionate? He built a hospital, and he would like his name to be on the building? Yeah, of course you could have such a thing. I'm not saying not.
You can
But-
have the name. Most of the hospitals
But not everyone who is generous is compassionate. But very often those who are generous are compassionate. I mean, the midah of compassion leads very often to the midah of generosity. And not just money. People's time, people's willingness to help other people. V'nedivut goreret rachmanut. Generosity also causes compassion. So these two character traits, they lead into each other. A person who's generous very often will bring him to a certain compassion. He sees that when he helped a person, they really were changed for the better. It makes him want to do it again. והתקשרות אל הרחמנות היא התקשרות אל הנדיבות. That's a nice rhyme of words. Compassion the same training you need, the same work you have to do on your soul to reach compassion is the same amount, it's the same kind of training you have to work in order to be generous. Harry, what is the root of compassion? What is compassion?
Rachem, like the womb of a woman.
Okay, the rechem is the womb, but what is compassion? Where does it come from? What outlook on life causes you to have compassion?
Well, it's associated with Tiferet.
Empathy.
Right.
Kindness.
You're getting
Which
Kabbalistic to me.
Oh,
No,
empathy,
the
maybe?
word it's a combination of chesed, which is kindness, but also with gevurah, with justice together. It's not just an all-giving thing.
free-for-all.
It's measured, and it's like sometimes it's compassionate. For example, for a parent not to give a child money to pay for something based on their mistake. Sometimes it's better for them to earn the money to pay back the thing. That's compassionate because you know that's what's best.
All right,
It may
this is
seem
an elaboration on compassion. I'm asking for a root. So, for example, could I argue? You could say this is incorrect. I'm thinking out loud. Could I argue that compassion is focusing on others and not just yourself?
Yeah.
A very simple definition. It's not.
You
It's
have
not
to be compassionate to yourself too, though.
true. But generally, where a person is not compassionate is because they're overindulgent in themselves and not in other people and what their problems are.
Well, yes, it can also be true of himself. You're overindulging and not seeing what it is you really need.
Okay, right. It's correct. It's correct. Generosity, being charitable to other people, not just money, time, energy, care. It comes from the same place of being able to see another person's needs and not just your own. And so these two character traits really share the same shoresh, the same root, the same common ground. V'chen hadavar barachmanut, a feeling of wanting to help someone who is sick, hungry, and in trouble. Sympathetic consciousness of others' distress, together with a desire to alleviate it. So that's what Zev was saying about chesed and gvura, is that essentially it's not just recognizing that a person needs help, but also the action of being able to do it in the right way. Rachmanut, compassion, is also linked to arichut apayim, calmness. Calmness. Why calmness? That's an interesting one.
What's the word? Arichut?
Arichut apayim literally means long-facedness. We say that Hashem is an erech apayim. He has a long face, meaning he's slow to anger.
Oh.
So he's translating slow to anger as calmness. You can argue with
Like
his
communism?
not communism. Calmness like being calm as opposed to being
Oh,
angry or
calmness.
volatile. Or
Yeah, okay.
why are these connected to each other?
To be compassionate, you have to be calm.
Why?
A lot of times, like if someone's in stress, you want to calm them down.
I'm working this out of my own head. You help me out. There's no right answer here.
Compassion. Calm.
Why is compassion related to being... Let's not use the word calm. Let's use perhaps patient. Patience.
Because
All these
without
different-
that, you can't see clearly. It's a matter of judgment.
Right, it's a matter of judgment. To be able to make a judgment call requires a certain... It can't be... I heard a story yesterday. Rabbi Shlomo Katzin, should live and be well, was giving the eulogy for our Rabbi Shamula. And he was saying that when he decided to open up a yeshiva, he needed another Rosh Yeshiva with him. Somebody who was an administrator. He knew what he was good at, he knew what he wasn't good at. I mentioned that in my class on Shabbat. And so he looked for Rabbi Shamula. He had known him from New York. Rabbi Shamula was an engineer. He was trained to be an engineer. He was a rabbi, but also an engineer. He was born in Egypt. And he was working in the Negev for an American company that was building an airport because Israel was pulling out of the Sinai.
I got a job. I didn't go.
Yeah? Okay. So he was working instead of Eli.
Yeah, I didn't go because they wanted to work on Saturday.
Really?
In Israel?
They had this.
Wow.
Incredible. So he was working down in the Negev, and he was actually working a pretty menial job because he wasn't approved for security clearance due to the fact that he was born in Egypt. The American government did this to a lot of my grandparents. My grandma's yours today. When she came to visit America, it was very hard to get her a visa. She was born in Yemen. Yemen is considered like a terrorist country, but they didn't realize these are Jews that ran away from Yemen. It was a sort of like in the paperwork of the United States, they had no idea that a Yemenite person who lives in Israel is not a terrorist. It's a certain, okay, it's a certain, what they say in America.
They didn't
People,
equate him with being Jewish.
right, exactly, because you can't talk about religion, so you can only talk about nationality, whatever it was that led to this decision. So, Rav Katzin traveled down to the Negev and met with Rabbi Shamula by his break. So, Rabbi Shamula, how you doing? How's it doing down here?
It's a
Sure.
present harder time.
Yeah? So Shmuel said, I'm doing well, everything's great, it's the first time in my life I've ever been able to pay my bills. My wife is happy, the kids are happy, everyone's happy, Baruch Hashem. But now I want to know, Rabbi Katzin, what are you doing here? And he said, I am looking to hire you. He said, for what? He said, I need a Rosh Yeshiva. He said, crazy, I finally got a good job. Now you want to try and drag me back to Jerusalem to be a Rosh Yeshiva? So what can you guarantee me? He said, I can guarantee you half the salary that you're making right now. I can guarantee you double the work you're making right now, and that you have right now. And I can guarantee you that you will have the most satisfaction on a spiritual level that you will ever have in your whole life. Rabbi Shmuel said, I have to ask my wife. He discussed it with her.
And she said, you stand in that line.
And they decided they didn't know if they could rely on Rav Katzin. That was the real time. At the end of the day, you were making into a business partnership with somebody, you wondered if you could rely on them. So Rabbi Shmuel seems to have believed in handwriting analysis, and he asked Rav Katzin to write on a piece of paper. He wanted to send his handwriting to Rabbi Lifshitz, who I guess was a very famous, they call him graphologist, what do they call him?
Graphologist.
Yeah, okay, so he sent it to him. Is Rabbi Katzin able to be trusted? So Rabbi Lifshitz wrote back that his handwriting hints to Pachaz Kamayim. It's what Yaakov Avinu tells the sons who are wild, like spontaneously wild. He was telling Shimon and Levi, right? I believe he's talking
After Shechem.
What did he call them? After what they did to Shechem and Chesed. That's Rabbi Katzin's personality. And so he said, okay, but is he reliable? I said, yes. He's just, you should know, he's a little bit crazy, this one. and he said, okay. So he agreed to come to Yerushalayim and work with him. And why am I telling you the story? We're talking about
The art side.
Yeah. Compassion.
compassion,
rabbi
yes.
in Egypt taking the job or not.
Right, so he took the job, he came back to Yerushalayim. I'm getting to that point with you. That's not a senior moment, guys. I'm younger than everyone in this room.
Pressure before the rain, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think so?
You lose clarity of thinking.
So what happened was Rav Shmuel went up, he took the job, and he stayed with Rabbi Katzin until the end of days. And essentially that relationship was very interesting. Rabbi Katzin said that whatever he was spontaneous and jumping all around about, Rabbi Shmuel was very calm and collected. Everything was calm and collected. He was the one who kind of kept everything based, and there was a certain balance that existed. I know there's a reason I'm telling you the story. Pachaz Kamayim, handwriting analysis, Rabbi Shamula, Egypt, taking a job.
Well, it had to do with, we were discussing compassion and calmness.
You're going to calmness.
I don't remember. Kehillat.
That's
It's
good.
okay.
It was a good story, though.
Story, good story. Yeah.
Well, it would have to do something with one of the reasons why he decided to take the job back in
He's very
Yerushalayim. We still don't know what his wife told him.
Oh, I forgot a part of the story. There's a certain element of Hashgacha. The day afterwards, Rabbi Shamula got fired from his job.
Oh, and the
Unrelated to the
Unrelated to
situation.
this situation. So I don't understand what happened. So the guy said, listen, we applied for your security clearance in the U.S. Still went back. It came back. We got a whole stack of letters of who's approved, who's not approved, and yours fell behind the drawers in the desk. And I only found it today. It says for 5 months we kept you on the low security clearance because we didn't know if you were approved or not. He said, today we were moving the desk, the letter fell out, and I know that you're not approved. That's certain Hashgacha. Hashem runs the world in mysterious ways, and a person needs to know that sometimes we're part of this this program, part of this game. And that's why the story was told at the Shiva, by the way, to show a certain...
Probably they offered him now a quarter of the salary.
Exactly. But there's a certain compassion that's connected to calmness. When a person is patient, a patient person, they have to be willing to... If it's all about me, I was thinking about Rabbi Katzin and how spontaneous he was. That was exactly where. He's not a patient person. And part of his success is because he's not patient. But the character traits of compassion and of generosity can only come from a person who is not so... When a person worries, maybe I don't have enough money, maybe I'm not going to... They're not able to stop and say, well, maybe I have, maybe I'm able to help, maybe this is good, maybe next month it'll be better so I can help out this month. There's a certain yeshuv hadat, a menuchat hanefesh, a serenity of mind that you need in order to be generous and compassionate. And not everybody has that. And
To make
these...
any decision, you have to have that. Any
Well, there are people who make decisions out of their head. They just pull
Yeah, but
pull an idea out of their pocket, and that's what they run with.
when you have anxiety, you make decisions. It's usually the wrong one.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's emotions.
Emotions that are pushing you to those decisions.
Yeah, it's spontaneous emotions.
וכן הדבר באריכות אפיים ובענווה ובפרישות ובהסתפקות במועט ובמאבק עם יצר הרע ובביטחון באלוהים. And he connects all of these together. And that is the attributes of calmness, humility, abstinence, contentment, spiritual battle, and reliance on Hashem. All of those things demand from a person the same kind of training in order to reach those levels. They're all interconnected. And essentially what Rabbeinu Avraham is going to set us on now is a path of how to become better people, how to cling to Hashem by first building up every one of these character traits. B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue with this thought.
Can I ask one question over
Sure.
What does Rabbeinu Avraham mean by abstinence?
There's a whole chapter on it, Prishut, and you can actually.
I think I've
There's
read
time
some
till we
of it, but I
get this.
still
You
don't
can
get
read it.
Because my image of abstinence is like the Buddhist monks or the priests, who give up material things. But I know that he says in his book that we don't have a hair shirt mentality like the Sufis.
Abstinence is very much connected to histakut b'muat, which is being able to do with little. The understanding is not to be too attached to things that are worldly. And it doesn't mean rejecting them or becoming disgusted by them, but a little more of not letting those, there are some people, they walk by a really fancy car, that I wish I had enough money to buy this car, it would be so cool. That person, it's okay, you can feel that way, but the person didn't yet reach the understanding that, so what if my car is on a lease, or if I own it, or if I rent it, it gets me from point A to point B, that's what I need a car to do. I can afford whatever it is, and it doesn't break down on me every time I turn the engine on. Great, so what do I need what difference does it make? The speed limit is still 65 on the freeway. That person is what we would call a person who's a parush. He has what he needs, and he doesn't need more. He doesn't ask for more. It's not asceticism as in hiding in a cave and neglecting the world, but not to get so attached to the things in this world that people call luxuries. It says, Kiddushim tiyu LaHashem Elokechem. You should be holy to Hashem your God. The famous teaching is, Kadesh et atzmacha b'ma shemutar lecha. So how do you become holy? By giving up the things that you're allowed to have but don't need. The Mekubalim, the first step they ever did in this process was, for example, not eating meat. Eat food. For the person to have food. I understood that. Yeah. But meat, they viewed as a luxury. Something that wasn't necessary for a person to live. And at times even damaging for a person. Not just physically, but also spiritually. The shechita, all kinds of problems that come up with that. And therefore they chose to abstain, not from food, they weren't fasting, but to abstain from, they wouldn't have dessert at the end of their meal. Why do I need to have dessert? I had my food, I'm full, I'm going to bed. They'd have tea, I wanted something hot, but they wouldn't put sugar in it. A certain histapkut b'mu'at, willingness to live with a little bit, not everything that I want.
Less.
The Ravad, he suggests that if a person wants to try to accomplish a little bit of this character trait, it's true that Rizal says it doesn't apply anymore. But it seems like the Balei HaMusar still push this idea. When you're eating your meal, you're eating food, and there's like that last piece on your plate, you just want to clear off the whole plate. Don't do it. Throw it out.
Throw it out. It's wasting.
Oh, it's wasting. The Ravad says it's only wasting. Well, today you might have a refrigerator, so you can
Put it in a
save
package,
it. Okay,
put it in the fridge.
but in the Ravad's days, there were no refrigerators.
No.
So that last piece of chicken, I don't know, that little bit of cookies you had on your plate,
it
they
to
weren't
your
going to last till tomorrow. The Ravad felt that wasting food applied when there was no constructive purpose to the waste of food. But if the food being thrown away was it was helping you refrain from the extras of life, it was teaching you a life lesson, you were really connected to that, it wasn't a waste. In fact, the food was serving a higher purpose than being eaten. For example, the question is if a person has unhealthy food, are they allowed to throw it out, or do they have to finish it because you can't waste food?
Unhealthy food most of the time taste.
So what do the poskim say? The poskim say it's bal tashchit. There's a prohibition of wasting. It says, but bal tashchit de gufa adif. You're either going to waste your body or you're going to waste the food. then it would be better for you to waste the food than to waste your body. This is a famous halachic teaching.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That is a good idea.
So, it is wasting. Depends from which perspective you're looking at it. The famous question that comes up in preschools all the time, those like arts and crafts the kids make with noodles, they stick them to the paper and they color them with gut. Is that a waste of food? Are they allowed to make art out of food? It's a big debate, back and forth, back and forth. The poskim who allow it are saying it's not a waste. They're using it. Yeah, it was made for eating, but they're using it for another purpose.
It's still giving pleasure.
Right? It's still giving a kind of benefit. They're not throwing it in the garbage. They're doing something with it, and that's where they come from.